This is the Next Take Podcast, episode 106 with Mikel and
Tanyka.
where we have conversations on different topics. So happy Pride Month, everybody. We're here. We're also doing a whole series
Mm-hmm.
on Pride Month. So I don't know how many episodes we're doing. I think Tanyka can confirm that with us.
Yeah. We're doing 1, 2, 3, 4 episodes.
4 episodes. Okay. All right. So what's today's special episode based on this special month, Pride Month?
Mm-hmm. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. So
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about the Stonewall Riots, which we definitely touched upon when we talked about Marsha P. Johnson last year. Very, very briefly, we talked about that. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to elaborate on the Stonewall Riots.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go. Let's do it.
So first of all, before we head into it, Mikel, have you ever heard of the Stonewall Riots?
I have never heard of Stonewall Riots at all.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get to it. So, so the Stonewall Riots, also called the Stonewall Uprising, began in the early hours of June 28th, 1969, when New York City police raided the Stonewall Inn, which was a gay club located in Greenwich Village in New York City. The raid sparked a riot among bar patrons and neighborhood residents as police roughly hauled employees and patrons out of the bar, leading to 6 days of protests and violent clashes with law enforcement outside the bar on Christopher Street, in neighboring streets, and in nearby Christopher Park. The Stonewall Riots served as a catalyst for the gay rights movement in the United States and around the world.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of signs that say Stonewall means fight back, smash gay oppression.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
Protesting.
I'm sure we'll kind of get into it here, but
Yeah.
the thing with this and how it led to this was like, first of all, you couldn't have gay bars, that wasn't allowed, which is like, who gives a fuck? But anyways, it's like, you couldn't do that. So like, police knew that you were doing it, would kind of somewhat ignore it, but then would decide, okay, now we're going to riot, or not, we're not going to riot, we're going to raid it. And that's what would happen. And it's just like, really and truly, at the end of the day, who gives a flying what people are doing? And again, straight people go to gay bars too. And it's just like, okay. It just makes me really angry, especially with kind of what we're seeing now today. It's just like, it's really angry.
I mean, it's progress, but we still need work to.
Oh, no, it's not progressing. It is going backwards. We are currently going backwards.
You still think we're going backwards?
With the current administration, we are going backwards.
Oh, you mean the United States? Okay.
Well, yeah, because again, this happens in the United States, right?
Okay, right.
So yes, with the current administration, yes, we are going backwards.
All right. Yeah, I forgot we have Trump.
I wish I could forget we have Trump. So the 1960s and preceding decades were not welcoming times for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Americans. For instance, solicitation of same-sex relations was illegal in New York City. Let that sink in. Illegal. Okay. For such reasons, LGBT individuals flocked to gay bars and clubs, places of refuge where they could express themselves openly and socialize without worry. However, the New York State Liquor Authority penalized and shut down establishments that served alcohol to known or suspected LGBT individuals,
Mm,
arguing that the mere gathering of homosexuals was quote unquote disorderly.
mm,
Okay.
interesting. Wow.
Thanks to activist efforts, these regulations were overturned in 1966, and LGBT patrons could then be served alcohol. But engaging in gay behavior in public, for example, holding hands, kissing, or dancing with someone of the same sex, was still illegal.
You
So,
think you
hmm,
think society in America would be okay with homosexuality
why
at
would you
this
think that?
time? In the 1960s,
Why would you ever think that? Why would you?
hippies,
Why would you?
rainbows, all that
No.
stuff, and
Oh, you say baby child? No,
yeah,
no. If you saw
homose-
how they treated people
was- yeah,
who contracted AIDS in the 80s,
mhm,
like, no,
mm,
no. Not
okay,
even just the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
hmm,
And no,
mm, mm.
no,
Yeah, well,
unfortunately.
I thought the 1960s. Oh, okay,
No, no.
okay, interesting. Go ahead.
So, yes, with that, so yeah, showing public affection, that was illegal. So police harassment of gay bars continued, and many bars still operated without liquor licenses, in part because they were owned by the mafia.
Wow.
Who knew the mafia was coming into this? I did, but who knew?
Hmm,
Um, the first documented U.S. gay rights organization, the Society for Human Rights, was founded in 1924 by Henry Gerber, a German immigrant. Police raids forced them to disband in 1925, but not before they had published several issues of their newsletter, Friendship and Freedom, the country's first gay interest newsletter.
mm,
America's first lesbian rights organization, the Daughters of, I think it's Bill sorry if I said that wrong,
mhm,
was formed in San Francisco on September 21st, 1955.
mm,
In 1966, 3 years before Stonewall, members of the Mattachine Society, an organization dedicated to gay rights, staged a sip-in where they openly declared their sexuality at taverns, daring staff to turn them away, and suing establishments who did. That is
mm,
amazing. I'm sorry. That's so
mhm,
good. When the Commission on Human Rights ruled that gay individuals had the right to be served in bars, police raids were temporarily reduced.
mm,
The crime syndicate saw profit in catering to shunned gay clientele, and by the mid 1960s, the Genovese crime family controlled most Greenwich Village gay bars, so that's the mafia. In 1966, they purchased Stonewall Inn, a straight quote unquote bar and restaurant,
mhm.
cheaply renovated it, and reopened it to the next
Right.
year as a gay bar.
So police raids on gay bars were a routine in the 19.
Routine.
Oh, wow.
Routine. Hmm.
Mm,
Stonewall,
interesting.
a very well, not like that sounds for you.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Stonewall Inn was registered as a type of private bottle bar, which did not require a liquor license because patrons were supposed to bring their own liquor. So BYOB, club attendees had to sign their names in a book
Oh,
upon entry to maintain the club's false exclusivity.
mm,
The Genovese family bribed New York's sixth police precinct to ignore the activities occurring within the club.
mm,
Not because it's a gay club, but because the mafia is a part of it. They didn't give a shit about that. But anyways,
mhm, mhm.
without police interference, the crime family could cut costs how they saw fit. The club lacked a fire exit, for example, which um, I do want to talk about um, where that can go wrong. There is a
Mhm,
case where that can go wrong.
mhm.
Um, so I might save that for next year.
Right.
Because it's a really, really sad case, but let's just put it this way. When a fire exit is not put in place, people die. So we'll leave it there.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so that's not good.
yeah.
Um,
It isn't.
wanting water behind the bar to wash glasses, so that was also lacking. Clean toilets that didn't routinely overflow, and palatable drinks that weren't watered down beyond recognition.
Mm,
No one wants a watered down drink. Come on now. Anyways,
mhm,
what's more, the mafia reportedly blackmailed the club's wealthier patrons who wanted to keep their sexuality a secret.
mm,
Nonetheless, Stonewall Inn quickly became an important Greenwich Village institution. It was large and relatively cheap to enter. It welcomed drag queens, who received a better reception at other gay bars and clubs. It was a
mm,
nightly home for many runaways and homeless gay youths who panhandled or shoplifted to afford the entry fee. And
mm,
it was one of the few, if not the only, gay bar left that allowed dancing. So apparently, this is also footloose and you can't dance at a bar. This is ridiculous.
mm.
Raids were still a fact of life, but usually corrupt cops would tip off mafia run bars before they occurred, allowing owners to stash the
So,
alcohol.
so wait, mafia. The mafia was tipping off the officers.
Oh, yeah.
Or was it?
Oh,
Jeez.
yeah. Let me tell you, I think a lot of improvement has happened within the police force in New York City, but
Mm,
back in the day, up until like the 90s, the
mm,
police force in New York City was corrupt and can easily be corrupted.
mm.
So that does, yeah, that's not even surprising at all
I
for
still
me.
think, I still think the police, in New York, could still be corrupted.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know?
I think
Yeah, yeah,
any police force is capable of being corrupted.
yeah.
Um, but I think in comparison to what it used to be, New York isn't as bad. But again, I say this after kind of what's happened within like um the Gringo Beach and everything like that with the Long
Mhm,
Island guy. But
mhm,
um that was obviously more recent. But yeah, every police force is capable of being corrupt. I just don't think it's
mhm,
as bad as it once
mhm,
was,
mhm.
if that's even saying anything.
True. Yes, no, you're right.
Um So, yeah, so the allowing owners to stash the alcohol sold without a liquor license and hide other illegal activities. In
Mm,
fact, the NYPD had stormed Stonewall Inn just a few days before the riot-inducing raid.
mm,
So, when police raided Stonewall Inn on the morning of June 28th, it came as a surprise. The bar wasn't tipped off this particular time.
mhm.
Armed with a warrant, police officers entered the club, roughed up patrons, and finding bootlegged alcohol, arrested 13 people, including employees and people violating the state's gender appropriate clothing statute. What does that even mean? But
Yeah.
okay. Basically, female officers would take suspected cross dressing patrons into the bathroom to check their sex.
Mm. Wow.
I hate that. How violating.
Yeah.
Because imagine, like, think of it this way, the tables were turned and that was men doing that to women. We wouldn't hear the end of it. So why is it okay for women to do that to men? That's sick. It's a sick. Anyway,
I mean, back in the day, you would say that that's like, and then they're just a bunch of wussies.
yeah,
Now
basically.
we're more exposed to, women who, were some to men or, doing domestic violence towards men.
Hmm.
It's more aware now,
Men
it's
can be
yeah,
victims as well,
yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, and again, I do want to say yes, we've come a long way in
yeah,
terms of we can respect people.
yeah,
But again, when we see kind of what's happening within the transgender community, what's happening within the drag queen community, It's like hearing things like this. It's like,
Mhm. Mhm.
and again, let me be, I mean, most drag queens usually are within this community, but not all cross dressers are gay, you know? Not, and cross dressing is very different than drag queen, right?
Mhm.
Not all cross dressers are gay. Not all, you know, drag queens are
Yeah.
gay, you know? So it's just
Yeah.
like, it's so like narrow-minded thinking that because you see a man or what you perceive as a man um wearing women's clothing, it's just like, okay, so and I haven't gotten to this episode yet, but I do
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
with Golden Girls that this is going to be a very prevalent topic
Mhm.
of because someone is a cross-dresser or potentially transgender. And again, I'm coming from a place where I have not seen that episode yet, but I've heard about it. Um, it's like just because someone identifies in a certain way doesn't mean sexuality and identity is two different things. So it's just very narrow-minded to kind of like hear this and to hear that the women officers were the one to do this when it's like women within the police force are viewed, in a way that we don't belong. So to kind of see you doing the same thing to a
Mhm.
community where you feel like they don't belong is just mind-boggling.
Yeah. I understand, you know, a kid not understanding it because like they probably never seen something like that before,
Right,
and then they just like laugh and
right.
etc.
Or they might
Because yeah,
stare or like
yeah,
whatever. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
understandable, but like
And it's
an
up to the
adult,
parent to
yeah, to
educate them.
educate them, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But an
yeah.
adult, yeah, it's not funny.
No,
It's definitely not
it
funny.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah. If you feel comfortable wearing what you wearing, that's fine. You
Yeah,
should be okay with that. So, yeah.
yeah. So fed up with constant police harassment and social discrimination, angry patrons and neighborhood residents hung around outside of the bar rather than disperse, becoming increasingly agitated as the events unfolded and people were aggressively manhandled. At one point, an officer hit a lesbian over the head. A man hit a woman over the head.
Mhm.
Doesn't even matter what her sexuality is, okay? As he forced her into the police van, she shouted to onlookers to act, inciting the crowd to begin throwing pennies, bottles, cobblestones, and other objects at the police. Within minutes, a full-blown riot involving hundreds of people began. The police, a few prisoners, and a Village Voice writer barricaded themselves in the bar, which the mob attempted to set on fire after
Mhm.
breaching the barricade repeatedly. I mean, there's a lot going on right now.
Right. Yeah.
The fire department and a riot squad were eventually able to douse the flames,
Mhm.
rescue those inside Stonewall, and disperse the crowd. But the protests, sometimes involving thousands of people, continued in the area for 5 more days, flaring up at one point after the Village Voice published its account of the riots. Though the Stonewall uprising didn't start the gay rights movement, it was a galvanizing force for LGBT political activism, leading to numerous gay rights organizations, including the Gay Liberation Front, Human Rights Campaign, GLAAD, which was formerly Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, and I think it's PFLAG, which was formerly Parents, Family, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. On the 1 year anniversary of the riots on June 28, 1970, thousands of people marched in the streets of Manhattan from the Stonewall Inn to Central Park in what was then called Christopher Street Liberation Day, America's first gay pride parade. So that's really interesting. The parade's
Mhm.
official chant was "Say it loud, gay is proud."
Mhm.
In 2016, then President Barack Obama, our president, designated the site of the riots Stonewall Inn, Christopher Park, and the surrounding streets and sidewalks, a national monument in recognition of the area's contribution to gay rights. So
Mhm.
I do have some pictures that I'll post um, with kind of like the explanation of those pictures. There is a picture here of Marsha P. Johnson as
Uh,
well, which we talked about before last year, as mentioned. Sylvia Rivera, who we did talk about very briefly while talking about Marsha P. Johnson because they knew each other. This picture of her as well. Um, so yeah, we'll have those up as well to kind of go alongside that. But
mhm,
yeah, I'm pretty sure Stonewall Inn is still up in New York.
mhm,
I would love to go down there one day. Um, and it's really interesting to kind of see that, like, really, like, the first ever gay pride parade was the year following the riots and,
mhm.
obviously kickstarted something that, happens all around the world, every year, and it's amazing.
Yeah,
So,
that's wow. Yeah,
yeah,
it is amazing.
it is.
Okay,
That's
all
it
right.
for me.
So this ends episode 106 of the Next Tape podcast. The Next Tape podcast is available now on all podcast platforms. We also have a website called Tanika.
And next day podcast pod page no wait, next day pod no, okay, hold on. Next
It's okay,
take
it's all good.
podcast dot podpage.io. I'm fine.
All good, all good. And where else are we at?
Facebook and Instagram at Next Day Podcast, Twitter, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Next Day Pod.
And we have an email. You can contact us at mikeltanika@gmail.com. That is mikeltanika@gmail.com. So yeah, we talked about the Stonewall riot
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I just think at the time I think it was wrong, you know. It really
100% it was wrong.
yeah, yeah,
People
yeah.
at the end of the day, and like we are gonna get into some like
Mhm, mhm,
darker topics
yeah.
in terms of like the AIDS,
Mm,
epidemic and everything, but um at the end of the day, it's kind of like people should be allowed to live their
their life
life
the way they
the way
should.
they were meant to live their life,
Yeah, that
you
too.
know? Just like
That
Gaka
too.
says, you were born this way.
Hmm.
And like that,
Well,
that's yeah, that's all that comes down to it.
uh,
Respecting people and you know,
yeah, but you're gonna get the that think, oh, you're not supposed to be dating a man is not supposed to be dating another man, or a woman is
I'm
not
not supposed
supposed
to
to be
be
dating
dating
another
a
woman.
woman. Yeah.
You know, um, you're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to be dressed like this. There's certain rules in life you gotta live by.
But
And,
who implemented those rules?
yeah, yeah,
There are no
that's what I'm trying to say.
rules that
Yeah,
are,
there's no
you
rules.
know,
Yeah,
and at the end of the
right.
day, it's just like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think like, this series, I wanted to kind of focus on like
Mhm.
where, where it started and where we are kind of today. I didn't want to focus too much on like the darker topics, but that's kind of something I do want to touch upon, in future series. But
Mhm.
you kind of look at like people who do things to other people, like, the John Wayne Gacy's of the world and the, you know, what's his face, Dahmers of the world. And
Right.
right now, kind of the more popular documentary that came out very recently is the I can't remember the name of the documentary right now, but it's about the guy who was kidnapping men out of gay bars back in the 90s
Hmm.
um they basically just disappear and maybe we'll talk about that in a future episode. But
Yeah. Yeah.
those are kind of people who, um, give gay people or just not just gay people, but people part of this community, um, bad name because it's this kind of like
Exactly.
they're they're dealing with their own demons.
Mm,
They hate themselves. They hate who they are.
I
Um,
agree.
and again, like the difference is with Dahmer, at least that I don't know if openly gay is the right term to use, but he didn't necessarily hide his sexuality.
Mhm,
So I'll give him that. But like with Gacy and this other guy whose name I can't remember right now,
mhm.
they were in they were married to women, you know? Um,
Yeah.
so they were dealing
Mhm,
with like their demons with that. But it's just like that part of it sucks
mhm.
when you kind of hear the stereotypes of how gay men are thought about, and it's just like we all gotta do a little bit better. So
100%. Yeah. A lot of
yeah.
everybody has to, play their part and do better.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm Mikal, and
And I'm Tanika.
we're out until
Next week.
next week. Peace, guys.
Bye.
Stay happy.
Absolutely stay happy.